In the business world, it's dog eat dog, and you need every bit of competitive edge you can possibly get. Whether you're a salesperson, an entrepreneur, a small business owner, or corporate executive, you've landed on the podcast that gives you that edge and more. This is the Business Coach Unplugged Podcast. Exploring the strategies, tactics, and mindset shifts needed to elevate your business and leadership skills to new heights. Your host has walked the walk. He's coached thousands of clients to remarkable results and rubbed shoulders with legends like Tony Robbins, Ken Blanchard, Jack Canfield, and Brian Tracy. It's practical advice, inspiring stories, and the occasional dose of tough love, helping you to overcome challenges and seize opportunities. This is the Business Coach Unplugged Podcast. And now your host, owner of Potential in Motion, coaching you to the edge of what's possible, Tom Kelly.
Welcome to the Business Coach Unplugged Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Kelly. It's a great fall day here in Chicago, and the Bears had a huge win this past weekend, so I'm pumped and excited for today's podcast. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, please do me a favor and leave a review wherever you're listening to the podcast, and also spread the word to anyone that you think might enjoy it. Today I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, sales. As you may know, I started my career in sales, and it's definitely one of my passions. Over the last 22 years as a coach, I've worked with thousands of people, and no matter who you are and what you do, you have to know how to sell. Sales is about influence, and even if you aren't in a traditional sales role directly dealing with customers, you have to understand the essence of sales, which ultimately is the ability to influence others. If you understand how to influence people, not only will you be able to sell, but you'll also be able to effectively lead others as well. In today's episode, I'm going to walk you through what I like to call the four-step sales process. I developed this process years ago, mainly to teach business owners and people that were new to sales how to easily sell anything. It's also applicable to people that already have sales experience, as it breaks what can be a complicated process down into a simple one. So if you're new to sales, intimidated by sales, or even a veteran salesperson, if you're a business owner or a corporate manager or executive who wants to improve your influencing skills, today's episode is for you. By the time we're finished today, you're going to have a simple four-step process that will bring your sales and influencing skills to a whole other level. So let's jump in and get started. So the first step in the four-step sales process is you have to identify and exacerbate the problem. The reality here is that people don't buy products or services, they buy solutions to their problems. So when you're meeting with your customer or client, the first step you have to take is you have to help them identify what their problem or challenge is, and then define it with clarity. Then you have to exacerbate the problem. The bigger the problem and more painful the problem is, the more likely it is that they're going to want to solve it. So the reality here is that people want to avoid pain. In fact, this is the largest motivator for human beings, is to avoid pain. So this step is crucial to establish their pain points in a very emotional way. You've got to move past the intellectualization of this and help them connect the dots to their emotions. So this is actually the largest motivator for most people and why most people will buy a product or service. So some key questions that you can ask to help them identify and exacerbate the problem is, number one, what is your biggest challenge with respect to whatever the topic is? One of my favorites is, hey, what keeps you up at night? Or what is the one thing that is preventing you from achieving your goal or outcome? Another great one is, what is your biggest fear? Once you help them start to begin to talk about what the problem or issue is, then what you have to do is you have to exacerbate that and connect it back to their emotions. So what I love to do here is ask them a simple question like this. What is that costing you? What is that costing you objectively, like in terms of a dollar figure? What is that costing you subjectively? Like, how does that make you feel? And what you want to do here is you want to keep asking questions to dig down deeper so that you can exacerbate that pain. So for example, if I ask someone what's it costing them, they say, wow, this bad habit I have that I need to solve is costing me $100 a day. You can ask them, well, how does that feel? How does that cost you if you're not going to stop that? What is that going to cost you over time? So you want to keep digging deeper and asking more and more questions so that you exacerbate the pain. And, you can also do that from a present perspective. What's it costing you now? You can move that forward to what's it costing you in the future if you don't address that. Really what you want to pin down here, though, is two specific things. Number one If you can get them to put a dollar figure to it or some other objective measurements, that's really critically important. And then the other thing is, what is that costing them subjectively? How do they feel? Because ultimately, people buy because they want to get rid of their negative emotions or feelings towards something. And you want to help them quantify it objectively because later on in the 4-step process here, we're going to tag those numbers back to a solution and help you close that sale. So that's step number 1. Step number 2 is you want to help them identify and visualize what the solution needs to look like. So once you help them understand what the problem is, you have to help them, effectively define what the solution needs to look like. And believe it or not, most people either haven't thought about this or they don't know exactly what the solution looks like. So this part of the process is tremendously valuable to people, and understanding and asking the right questions here and helping them kind of visualize that and picture what a solution looks like or what a solution needs to be is really important. So my favorite question to start this part of the process to ask is, if I could wave a magic wand and make this all better or make this exactly the way you want it, what would that look like? And then again here, what I want to do is I'm asking that question and listening to the response. I want to ask more questions and dig deeper on that to get more clarity. So simply asking questions, gaining more clarity, this will give you some more insights into what their, solution needs to look like, and it'll also give you some insights into their thought process. This is really a key step for a number of reasons. Number one, I always say clarity is power. So the more clear you are with what the outcome looks like and what the solution needs to look like, the more likely you are to have that. And then the other thing here is the more excited and inspired they're going to be as they talk about that solution. So once you help them get clarity around what the solution needs to look like, then you need to help them identify the positive emotions that they're going to feel when they solve that problem or obtain that new outcome or state. So this is the second most important thing, because the biggest motivator is pain avoidance, but the second biggest motivator is pleasure. So if you can help them identify what that solution looks like and get a better understanding of that, and then also connect the pleasure they're going to feel once they get that outcome, that's really going to help you with step number 2 here. So what are some key questions that you can ask in this situation here? So number 1, if you're able to achieve that outcome, what does that do for you personally? I really like to focus on them personally, because most people do things because of what's in it for them. How will that impact the bottom line, either of your business, or maybe you work in a business, an employee? How's that going to affect the bottom line? How's that going to make things better? How will that make you feel? Again, tagging that back to personal emotions. How is that going to help your organization? What else might that do for you? How is that going to help other people? How is that going to help your company, your community, your customer? So as you dig deeper and deeper on this, it's important because you're tagging more positive emotions to that solution. So number 1, we got to understand what the pain point is that you're trying to solve for, or what the problem is and what kind of pain that's causing them. Number 2, what do they want the solution to look like, and how's that going to make them feel better, and what kind of impact is that going to have them positively? And then finally, number 3 here is you got to help them determine what is preventing them from actually having that solution. So you just help your customer or client determine what their challenge or problem is, and also what the solution needs to look like. And obviously, if they could solve this problem for themselves, they would have done that already, right? So you've got to help them articulate what's preventing them from solving this on their own, because that's the value you're going to bring. You're going to step in and help them solve this problem. So you want to help them articulate what it is that's getting in the way of them solving the problem, so that they can see the value you're going to bring to the table. And I really call this the problem underneath the problem, or in another way, what the real problem is. Most people, when they tell you what the pain point is or what the problem is in that first step, aren't telling you what the real problem is. What the real problem is that they can't figure out how to solve it, or there's something that's getting in the way or preventing them from solving that on their own. So to get to this, really what you want to do is you want to summarize the first 2 steps by simply saying something like this. So, Mr. Customer, what I understand the problem is this, and this is what kind of pain that's causing you. What you'd like the solution to look like is this, and this is all the pleasure that you're going to get from that. So, just so I understand, what's preventing you from having that, or what's preventing you from solving that problem on your own? You just told me what the problem was and what it's costing you. You told me what the solution needs to look like and how that's going to benefit you. So why haven't you solved this on your own? What that does is it gets them to articulate in their own words what's getting in the way or what's preventing them from solving that. This is critically important because once they articulate this, then you can dig further and help them tag more pain to this. But it's also the reason that they're going to hire you or work with you to solve that problem. So once you do that, and once you understand what's preventing them from solving this on their own, the final step of the process is helping them define the value proposition. So once you understand the problem, what it's costing them, what the solution looks like, and why they can't obtain the solution, you have to segue to this fourth step. And I do this by asking a simple question. If I can show you a way to solve that problem and get the solution you want, what is that worth to you? And the reason you want to ask this question is you want to have them put a dollar figure to this, an objective, financial tag to that if you can possibly, and also a subjective emotional tag to that. Because what this does is it's going to establish the value that that client or customer has for solving their problem. And as long as the value they articulate is bigger than what you're going to charge them, then you're almost always going to make that sale. So if that's the case, once they state that number, as long as it's bigger than what you're going to charge them, you can move forward in the process. If it's not, then that's a signal to you that you haven't exacerbated the problem enough. So what you want to do is you want to go back to the beginning of the process and exacerbate that problem some more. So then they see that there's a larger, issue at hand here, and they put more value to it. The other reason you want to ask them these questions is you want them to articulate this value in their own words. Because if I tell you as a salesperson what the value is, that's going to have no credibility because they're going to see and say, well, you're just trying to sell me something. But if they articulate the value in their own words, then they're going to own that. It's going to make a lot more sense to them to move forward with you. So hopefully that makes sense. And once you have that number and you also know what you charge, now you can show them what the ROI is. So for example, if they put a number to something and they say, hey, you know what? The problem I'm having here is costing me $100,000 in my business, and I'm willing to pay for that, $10,000 for a solution. And let's say you're going to charge them $5,000 for that solution. Now what happens is you've got a massive ROI. They're going to write you a check for $5,000, and you're going to write them a check back for $100,000 to solve that problem. So hopefully that makes sense. So once these four steps are complete, if you did them properly, you've exacerbated the problem. You've helped them articulate exactly what it is that they're looking for. You've helped them identify what the value of that is, and you understand what's preventing them from doing this on your own. All you need to do is move forward and ask them for their business because they basically articulated exactly what that's worth to them, and there's a value proposition there. So one thing I don't want to overstep here, though, or step over, is the fact that, these steps have to come in order. I call it sales syntax. If you skip the process, if you skip one of those steps, or if you do them incorrectly out of order, then that process doesn't work correctly. So you got to make sure that you do them in order, step 1, 2, 3, 4, and that you don't skip any of those steps. If you do that, you will almost always make the sale if you do that correctly. Now, having said that, of course, there may be some objections at the end of this process. And I'm not going to get into how to overcome objections in this podcast. But in general, if they're objecting to moving forward at this point, it's usually for one of two reasons. Number one, they don't trust or believe that you can do what you say you can do, or number two, they don't trust themselves to follow through. Both of those objections, by the way, are fairly easy to overcome. But that's a deeper process here, and I don't want to get into the weeds here because I want to keep this really simple for you. So just to recap, there's 4 steps here that you need to take in the 4-step sales process. Step number 1 is you want to help your client or customer identify and exacerbate the problem. So help them identify and get clear what the problem is. And number 2, help them exacerbate the pain points there so that there's a lot of pain to that. Because remember, people buy because they're in pain. They want to solve that problem. Number 2, you want to help them identify and visualize what the solution needs to look like. And once you help them get clarity around that, you want to help them tag positive emotions to that, because the second biggest motivator for somebody is to move towards positive emotions or solving that problem. Step number 3 is what I like to call discovering the problem underneath the problem, or what the real problem is, and that's what's preventing them from having that solution or solving that on their own. And as you uncover this and discover this, they're going to start to see the value of you being able to connect their dots to the solution here. And then finally, the final step in the process is defining what the value proposition is. And you simply ask a question, hey, if I can show you a way to solve that problem and get the solution you want, what is that worth to you? And you want to dig deeper with that and really help them understand what the total value is there. As long as the value of what you're bringing to the table is greater than, or as long as the value that they put to solving the problem is greater than what you're going to charge them, you'll almost always make that sale. So that's all I have for you today. That's the 4-step sales process. It's real simple, real straightforward. So if you found today's podcast useful, you can also access a number of free resources that will help you improve your business as well as your leadership on my website at www.businesscoachchicago.com. Also, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, as I would love to connect with you. Thanks again for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a review, and of course, invite your friends to listen in as well. I'm Tom Kelly. Until next time, enjoy your week.
You've been listening to the Business Coach Unplugged Podcast. On this highly useful podcast for people in the business world, you get the absolute top-notch info from an absolute pro on how to elevate your business and your leadership skills. Tom Kelly owns Potential in Motion, coaching you to the edge of what's possible. He's also a professional speaker and leadership trainer. He's worked with some of the biggest names in the coaching business: Tony Robbins, Ken Blanchard, Jack Canfield, Brian Tracy. To sign up for a complimentary coaching session and to access some great free resources, hit the website at businesscoachchicago.com. Your success is not just a possibility, it's a certainty. See you next time on the Business Coach Unplugged Podcast.